Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the NextGen Planners podcast. My name is Amelia Hamilton, and I am Head of Community here at NextGen Planners. And today I'm very excited to be joined by a brilliant guest, and that is author and Deputy News Editor at the FT, Sonia Rach. Welcome, Sonia. How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, doing well. I'm excited. We're just saying Christmas is on the horizon. It's coming. We're ready for it. And so, yeah, I'm definitely excited for a little bit of a break after this busy year, for sure.
Yeah, it's been full on, hasn't it? I think it's just a lot going on, but at least Christmas is just around the corner, which always feels really nice.
Yeah, I always think Christmas is one of the only time really in the year where it is properly off as well, because everybody kind of shuts down and it's not like you're on annual leave and you think, oh, this is going on and this is going on. You go, no, everybody's just having a bit of time off. There's nothing I'm missing, and you can really zen out, I think.
Yeah, especially those kind of few days between Christmas and New Year where you sort of don't know what day of the week it is, but you're like, this is quite nice. I just want to sit indoors and watch movies, and that's perfectly acceptable. So that's that's kind of my favorite part. I think even just between in that period where you're like just kind of being lazy, and it's completely okay without feeling guilty.
Everyone says it's fine. Be as lazy as you want. You're like, oh, okay, sure. I can eat more. I can sit more. That sounds wonderful. Okay, well, we've got all of that to look forward to, but at the moment it is busy for you. And the first question that we always like to ask our guests on the podcast is, what does a day in the life look like for you? So to give everybody an idea of what you get up to, what kind of roles, responsibilities you have. Could you share what a day in the life of Sonia might look like?
Sure. So our days generally start at 7:30 in the morning and we finish at 4. So it's an early start, especially when you're in the office. You're up for like 5:40. So at the moment, that isn't so pleasant when it's so dark outside. But generally start the day then. We have 3 newsletters a day at FTAdviser. So we have the 9 a.m., the midday, and the 4 p.m. So we're kind of filing to those deadlines. And so when I'm kind of on the news desk, I'm just obviously writing and kind of sourcing news stories, having interviews with people. Kind of varies day to day, but they're sort of the timelines and kind of the thing that we're working towards. And then when I'm on editing duties, like I am right now, I'm sort of managing the team. So then it's sort of making sure that everything has been edited, putting together the newsletters and doing kind of more the flip side, writing a little bit less during those sort of periods. So yeah, that's generally the day, and finish around 4 p.m., which in the summer is absolutely lovely because obviously the days are so long that you really feel like you've got an evening and an afternoon as opposed to just an evening. But that's generally what it looks like.
Yeah, and it sounds exciting, and I guess kind of pressure filled if you have these constant deadlines. How do you find having to kind of turn over material that quickly?
Yeah, I think when you first sort of start out, especially kind of as a journalist in general, but even just, at FTAdviser, you realize that you really are working under pressure a lot and kind of working under time. And for me, that works really well because I think I work better under pressure. Like having deadlines works really well for me, having something to work towards, and just sort of, for example, I've got a story to write for tomorrow that it comes out every 2 weeks, this series that I'm doing. And I haven't written it yet because I've had until 2 weeks to write it. Whereas I'm like now I will write it today for tomorrow because I know that it's needed for tomorrow. So I think for me, the pressure is almost better. But for a lot of people, I think that would be quite difficult because it's stressful. But I think being a journalist, sort of you expect to be a little bit stressed out a lot of the time, or kind of at least sometimes. So it works for me anyway.
Yeah, I'm sure it makes the day go much quicker as well. If you suddenly can't look up and you go, oh, I guess it's the end of the day now. We've been nonstop.
Yeah, definitely. And I think because you work to those deadlines, it works. Like the first thing we file is at 8:30 in the morning, and then it's at 11:30, and then it's at 3:30. So then when you file the 11:30 and the newsletter goes at 12, because you've been up, you're kind of hungry, and it's lunchtime, so it's fine. You can have your lunch, and then you're working towards the afternoon one, and then it's like end of the day, and you're like, oh, this is quite nice. So yeah, it definitely does make the day go a lot quicker.
Yeah. And I mean, as if you weren't busy enough, you've decided to add more onto your already very busy plate. But rather excitingly, that is a new venture of a book. So I just wondered perhaps if you could start by sharing what that book is and why you decided to write it.
Sure, yeah. So the book is called Loose Change, Tina Learns to Save. It's a children's book, so it's specifically kind of focused on sort of introducing the concept of savings and interest and kind of that sort of financial education to kids. It's the book itself is about a young girl named Tina who visits the supermarket with her mum, and she chooses to spend her saved up pocket money on a toy. And the book kind of, introduces the concept of, oh, well, what if you saved this money? And then kind of introduce slowly the basic elements of earning interest and, what a bank is, and just kind of very basic level stuff, but also kind of introducing that concept because it will be completely new to those people and to that age demographic. So that's a little bit about the book. I mean, in terms of my sort of inspiration behind the book, came about as I was sort of on the hunt for a book for my niece who loves maths. And I thought, oh, actually, maybe I should try and get her a bit more of an educational book that teaches her something that she doesn't learn at school. But much to my surprise, I learned that actually there are loads of books out there for saving, but a lot of them are in dollars. So they're very American focused, which obviously is not the demographic that I'm trying to focus for pounds and UK based. So that's where the kind of idea started, because I was like, well, there's nothing suited to a UK readership, and I feel like there should be. So I just kind of sat down one day and was like, I'm going to write this down. And then that was it. And I think the kind of strongest inspiration for it was because financial education is something that I am super passionate about. I mean, I've written about it quite a lot, and I've tried to kind of shout about it as much as I can. And when I realized that there wasn't necessarily much for kids, I just felt like, something had to be done. So then the book came about.
Yeah, incredible. And how long then was that process between having this idea, deciding to write a book, and it finally now being out there in the world?
Yeah, so quite a while. So I think I had the idea around last year, like maybe I want to say September last year. But then I sort of had like a death in the family and had a few things that sort of came about that had put me off doing it at the time. And then over the summer, when I was like, oh, I'm trying to buy this book for my niece, I was like, let me try and do this again. And so it was around May, and I was like, let me try and write this. And then tried to quickly write it, get a storyboard, find an illustrator, do all of that. And then I self-published it. So it's available via Amazon, as opposed to kind of in the shops, which was more because I just wanted to get it done and out there. You can obviously go via publishers, and it would probably be better in that sense. But I'm hoping to be able to at least get it out in some independent bookshops and stuff like that at some point, and maybe in the future go via a publisher. But for now, I just self-published it because that sort of worked best for me.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, it seems kind of incomprehensible to me that you can decide in May to, write something, and then because you can self-publish it can be out there before the end of the year. That turnaround time is really cool. And so looking then at kind of the topic of the book, as you said, is financial education, and that's something that we talk a lot about within NextGen planners. And I know, I'm sure you, as you said, you're on the same page. There's just not really enough of it. And this kind of idea of financial literacy and kids not having the skills as they become adults to make informed decisions about how they're going to manage their money and all the rest of it. With the book, it is, as you said, it's written for younger children. Why did you decide to kind of pitch it at that age? I know you mentioned your niece, but I guess, is it to do as well with the kind of wider landscape of this problem of a gap in financial education?
Yeah, definitely. So the kind of age chosen was because before writing, I began doing some research, and a report from Cambridge University in particular stood out. And it found that behavior experts from Cambridge kind of reviewed previous studies to determine how children learn in general, and in particular how they learn about money. And they concluded that money habits, including the ability to sort of plan ahead and just prepare, are usually formed in early childhood. So it revealed that actually our approach to money is formulated by the age of 7, which is obviously super young, because that is just like bizarre to even think about. And the scary thing for me was that it said, once formed, it's difficult to reverse these habits later on in life. Now, I'm sure, like, for me, that was like a light bulb moment, because I was like, oh my God, all my bad habits started when I was a kid. So it's absolutely fine. But of course, it doesn't mean that, if that window is missed, then children are sentenced to like a life of debt and bad money habits, because that's obviously can always be rectified by proper education. But of course, kind of knowing this information, it seems almost like fairly straightforward solution would be start introducing the concept from a young age of why wouldn't you, almost. And like there was recently, earlier this month, kind of the government launched an inquiry into like financial education in schools, and so I'm hoping that will materialize into something. But one of the things that I thought was quite interesting was the Centre for Social Justice, which I only recently came across, the research called for like an urgent rethink of the way that we approach financial education. And they did that because they carried out some research last year, which found that 2/3 of young adults who experience financial difficulties believed that better financial education would have helped them. So it kind of just seems like it all stems from such a young age, that we should be sort of setting those habits from a young age, because that could be the difference between, potentially someone being scammed, or just someone, taking on an investment that perhaps isn't going to do that well for them, and they could lose their money, and they just will have a little bit more of an understanding to know what questions to ask, especially when it comes to things like crypto and things like that are always on social media now. Like it just seems to make sense. So yeah, that was sort of the reason for why I chose that age demographic specifically.
Yeah, and it just seems so obvious that why wouldn't we do that? It's mad that we can have this research, we can understand. I mean, I didn't think it was 7 years. 7 years old seems young to have your habits fixed by, and I guess, as you said, it doesn't mean that you can't make an effort to change that, but I'm sure it's quite hard to undo something that's already kind of rooted in your brain. But it just seems silly that there isn't more stuff out there that is giving people information at a basic level. And as you said, it's not hugely complicated. It's not like you have to sit down and really explain some difficult jargon, or get your head around in big topics, but it's just the basics of what money is, and how you can make it work for you, however much or little that you have.
Exactly. That's exactly that. And the thing is, I think from a personal point of view, the need for financial education just hits home that little bit more. And I think it's because when I started out as a financial journalist, I didn't have the slightest clue about investments or pensions, or even fully how interest works. I mean, it sounds really silly to say now, working for FTAdviser and writing, as a financial journalist, but it was quite daunting. And I think being in my first role writing about investments for fund managers, it was like imposter syndrome. I was like, I'm not qualified to be doing this. And what I realized, after a few years on the job and taking exams to expand my knowledge, and, I'd like to think I'm in a much better position financially, but that's also why I became extremely passionate about the need for financial education, because it seems like only fair that, regardless of ethnicity or background, or, any sort of differences, everyone should sort of have the same basic foundation skills, which is why teaching it in schools is so important, because parents might not have the resources or the time to sit down and teach their kids about this, but at least if they're getting the basics at school, they're all starting at the same place. And yeah, it definitely kind of stems from the fact that I'm very self-aware that had I not landed in the industry, I probably wouldn't have had a clue about, where to start when it came to money or personal finance either. And that's a really, really scary thought now that, I'm in my 30s and I think about that. I really think having a good grasp of personal finance is one of the most valuable skills that a person can have. And this is just made that passion bigger when I see that there's so many people that wouldn't have access to it, and the fact that it starts so young. So it's not even like people can just go and teach themselves. It's like, well, they're kids, so they're only going to be taught what they're taught, which is it's just kind of scary.
Absolutely. And that leads quite nicely actually into my next question, which I guess is, when looking at, it's really important that we're giving young people this information and this education. How much of it do you think is the role of a parent? How much of it do you think is the role of educators? And where do you think the challenges lie in both of those kind of sources of information?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is sort of both. I think it needs to be parents and educators, but obviously in schools, it's going through loads of government paperwork and consultations and stuff, and it might be a while till it actually materializes, who knows. So then parents kind of need to take the lead on it almost, if that's something they want to teach their kids. And the issue is that, teaching about money can easily feel like a chore. And from a kid's point of view, it could feel the same. They could be like, oh, it's just more learning. I've already been to school today. Like, I don't want to do this. So the challenge here is, obviously, if it was taught in schools, when kids are already in that learning mindset, it would make it a lot easier because parents can top it up if they want to, or not even. But in the meantime, it's sort of, I'm hoping that something like a resource like this book, that I've tried to help parents with. So many kids love to read and have it as part of their daily routine. It's not a super long book, and it's just one of the ways to introduce the topic so that kids can maybe ask those questions. So it's more of an interactive approach, as opposed to parents basically being like, here, learn this. It's like, oh, we've read this book, and then the kid's like, oh, well, mum, how do I do this? Or dad, how do I do this? Or grandparent, or whoever it may be. It just means that the conversation is starting, and that's all you can really ask for at that early age, just to plant that seed almost and then watch it grow. So yeah, I think it is a combination of both, but yeah, definitely at the moment, parents probably have a bigger part to play.
Yeah, and like you said, bringing your book into something that is interactive and fun and engaging, that doesn't feel like a chore. It just feels like, another story where, subtly you're going to get some lessons and information that you didn't think that you would. How did you, when you're writing the book, how did you look at balancing making it entertaining and engaging for kids, as well as giving kind of this information and this education?
Yeah, no. So I think in terms of what I tried to do is obviously through the illustration. So I got an illustrator to do all the design and stuff, and I think that the illustrators have done a really good job in terms of kind of the colors and trying to make the book itself interactive, like in terms of the appearance. But then in terms of the story, I think the way the book kind of, I hope tackles the issue of how to introduce the concept of money to them and saving. And I hope that one day Tina, the character in the book, the main character, will become kind of a household name where kids and parents can ask, what would Tina do in this situation? Or what would she do? Would she have spent this? Would she have done this? And I think money isn't the most interesting thing in general, and for especially for kids, but if they can understand the rewards, for example, I've tried to teach about interest, like, oh, if you don't spend this money, I will give you an extra X amount. They're like, oh, well, that means I can buy more toys with it. So there's like a self-interest in it almost that will make it hopefully more interesting to them, because it's not just, this is a bank, this is what you need to learn. It's actually this, if you learn this concept, it will help you, and you will actually be able to go to the supermarket with more money to buy whatever toy you want, a better toy. So I think that is kind of one way that I've tried to do this in the book. But then obviously, in addition to that, once that concept has been introduced, there are other ways that I guess parents or siblings or whoever it may be can help introduce that concept. So whether that's playing with the money in their money box and saying, look, if you give me this to save for you, I'll tomorrow or in next week, I'll give you this much extra to put back into your money box, or hypothetical scenarios that maybe make it more fun for them is, I think, a really good way to keep them engaged and like in the conversation of money.
Definitely. And I think, it's an abstract concept, isn't it? Money, like even for us as adults, it's sometimes quite hard to really make it tangible, and it's just certain numbers in space, and it doesn't really mean anything until it does, until you want to use it for something. And to be able to make something that's so abstract and intangible actually physical, you can see what happens if you do certain things. In a book, you can touch the money and see, oh, I get more if in these kind of hypothetical situations. It feels like a really valuable and useful thing that you can be doing with kids. And as you said, ideally in the future, Tina's going to be a household name. Have you got more ideas for more books? Do you want to expand on what you've already written? What's the hope? What's the goal?
Yeah, so I mean, it's completely just an idea at this point, but I as I wrote it, I thought, oh, this would be a really good one. This would be a really good one. And I think, like, the ideas are kind of maybe one on currencies. So, when kids are going on holiday with their parents and they start to understand the different types of currency, this, like, oh, we're in Europe, they use euro, we're not paying in pounds, and that kind of thing. Just introducing those concepts is one idea, just for them to understand. Maybe their pocket money would be converted into that currency, but maybe that would be a bit advanced. So we'll have to see. And then obviously the kind of other things would be the cost of borrowing, for example. So, if you borrow the money maybe from a sibling and you start to see that you have to pay them back with interest. And so the same interest you will earn for lending that money or kind of giving it to your parents, you will have to give to someone else for borrowing it. And those kind of concepts I thought would be quite good. I mean, I haven't quite got there in terms of which exact series I want to do, but it's just basic concepts of money that I guess are basic enough for a 6 to 11-year-old to understand, but also plant the kind of seed and that interest for them to learn. So yeah, that's sort of the gist of things.
It sounds cool. I think it would be a really, really great series to have as a tool for parents and educators. And I think my next question then is, I obviously work for NextGen planners, and our community are financial planners. You obviously are in the journalism side of finance and have a lot of knowledge and speak with a lot of people who are also knowledgeable about this area. What role do you think we have in making sure that financial education is improved more generally?
Yeah, so I mean, I personally think, there is no amount of kind of resources that would be enough at the moment, especially for parents and for kind of educators and people that want to almost beat the drum on this and kind of lead the way. And so it feels like the financial advice industry as a whole could potentially be shouting about it a lot more in terms of trying to encourage financial education. But even just maybe, I don't know, going to schools and doing like little talks or stuff, maybe that would be for an older demographic as opposed to the younger 6 to 11-year-olds because they're so young. But, going to secondary schools, maybe just to talk about, the risks of crypto or, the kind of risks of investing in something that isn't, or with someone that isn't FCA regulated, that kind of stuff, which I think is definitely not common knowledge to a lot of people, could be done in terms of going to the schools and talking about it. I feel like I was talking to someone about this recently, and I mentioned that, when you're at school, you used to get I think it was a police or someone else that used to come into the PSHE lesson and talk about the different drugs and like the harms of them, and you would see it in like a tray and they would kind of show you. And you know, as much as like I remember that because that was quite a different thing to what I normally would learn about at school. And I think maybe having someone come in to talk about the different types of investments, you know, gold and, you know, bonds and equities and words that mean not much to most people, which is absolutely fine, because why would they? You're not taught it, would be so helpful for people to learn about, so that they can make kind of informed decisions with their money and, you know, not get scammed and not get conned, and just, you know, be a bit safer with it. Because it's not really people's fault. They just don't have the resources or the knowledge, unless you really know someone or you've learned that through your parents or someone else. Why would you know it?
Yeah, and I guess the other thing then to mention as well is, even if you are looking to educate yourself as, you know, a young adult, perhaps in secondary school, there's so much misinformation and disinformation about what you should do that it's actually quite hard if you're wanting to like you said, crypto might be everywhere. You have all these people saying, well, invest in this, it will give you that, like there's no risk here, do that, you'll get huge gains. And it's really easy, if you don't have that kind of foundation of financial education, to be caught up with that and suddenly find yourself in a situation that's way worse than you were originally.
Definitely. And that's the thing, you know, maybe if a financial advisor or someone from the industry went into a school and explained the different types and, you know, explained crypto and all the other, you know, no other standardized investment. But you never know, like that conversation that they've had in that school, they might have a friend in another school and they'll tell that friend, oh no, don't invest in crypto because I've just done this, like went to this talk and this is what I found out. Or why don't you invest in this because currently this is doing well, or whatever it may be. But it will just start the conversation, because money is such a taboo thing that most people don't talk about it, and it just needs to be spoken about, because that's how the people in the know stay in the know and the people not in the know kind of get left behind. So
definitely. Yeah, I think that's a really important point to make as well, isn't it? It's just exclusionary, and it has been up to this. And it just means that the idea of like being able to lift yourself out of the situation, it becomes harder and harder because you're not given the means to do so.
Definitely.
For sure. So how has the response been to the book then? So it's out there now. People have read it. What's the kind of feedback you've been getting about it?
Yeah, so it's been really positive, and like really, really good in terms of the orders that I've received. And I've been really overwhelmed, to be honest, because I think when I was obviously doing the first draft, I tested it with a bunch of kids and I got some feedback to make sure that it kind of suited the age that it needed to, you know, it wasn't too complicated, it wasn't too basic, you know, whatever it was. And that's kind of how I picked that age, because that was the one that was suited to most. But then since kind of the launch, which was a couple of weeks ago now, the response has just been overwhelmingly lovely. Like I've had so many people email and message to say that they have bought the book for like a nephew or a niece or their own children or whoever it may be. And they've said that the kids have had really good feedback. They've liked the characters, they've liked the color, they've understood the concept. And the nicest part is, like, you know, at the back of the book, I put in an acronym almost for saving, and kind of reflected from some of the ideas in the book. And I thought that kids are gonna be a bit off put, that like I don't want to learn more sort of thing. But actually, like one parent emailed me and she said to me, oh, I really think that the acronym that you put was really good, because now my daughter remembers it and she'll say, oh yeah, what was the V for? Oh, it's value, or whatever it may be. And so that's been really nice, because I was like, oh, I put that in, but I kind of thought that page can be skipped if it is very much dependent on the parent and maybe how the kid grows. But that's been really, really nice. And then I had another piece of feedback that someone had sent me, and he said that he tried it with his son, and the son basically was like, I had no idea I could make more money. This is amazing, from my pocket money. And I was like, that was really like heartwarming, because I thought, oh, he's really understood the concept of interest. So I've like done my bit of trying to educate like even just one child. And so she was like, the guy was like, oh, my son is now telling me that he wants me to put aside a bit of his pocket money every month so that I can just add interest to it. And that's just really lovely, because obviously it means that that kid has succeeded in understanding the book and the kind of element of the book, but he's also engaged and is enjoying the fun part of that reward. So yeah, it's been really, really nice, and really nice that actually the book's done exactly what I hoped it would do, because obviously it's my first time doing something like this, so I was very nervous that it wouldn't kind of suit the target market, or it wouldn't kind of be what parents want to buy for their kids or anything like that. But yeah, it's been really, really nice.
Yeah, that must feel so satisfying to have a goal, to kind of work out how can I best achieve this, and then when it's out there, go, well, I've done it. And to have those stories that confirms they've understood the concepts, and not only have they understood it, it's made them want to act on it as well. So definitely. I mean, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's really nice. And I think because when you're self-funding it and you're kind of doing it yourself, like when I was paying the illustrator and doing all of that, paying for it to be published, I was like, this is so much money that could really go wrong, and I'm not sure if it's going to do as well. But it has been so nice, and I've had so much industry support, even from the likes of like NextGen, and just kind of everyone in the industry that has sort of heard about it or seen it has emailed me or called me or messaged me to say, how can we help, or can we push this, that we're really passionate about this. And so it's nice also to speak to people that share the same passion as you, because the end goal is the same. I mean, even if another 10 books came out like this, I would be really happy. I wouldn't see them as like, oh, they're competing with me. They're like, no, actually we're all trying to do the same thing, and the more resources the better, because kids are going to get bored of reading one book anyway. So yeah.
Absolutely. And you've done, the timing wise, it's perfectly in time for Christmas. So if anybody wants to add a little stocking stuffer of a brilliant financial education, then they know exactly where to go to find that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Hopefully it's like the ideal stocking filler, or something that the child won't hate you for. Hopefully.
No, I think a book is always good. I think kids always appreciate books, for sure. But okay, so I've got 2 final questions for you now, Sonia, and these are questions that we ask everybody who comes on the podcast. And the first question is about a book. So we'd love to hear a book that's perhaps helped you in your career so far.
Sure. I think I have 2, but I think I know it's really annoying when people do that and you're like, can I have one?
You can have 2.
No. But I think
have two. It's Christmas.
I think it's because they tie in quite well together. So in terms of like a career-based book or a money-based book, it's The Psychology of Money. And I think when I sort of started in this industry, I had no idea about investment, like I said, and just like, it was completely way over my head. And this kind of taught me a little bit about sort of, your thoughts and feelings and how they affect your money, and kind of how it's all tied together in terms of, tips that can help you make better choices, and how, because when you first start investing, like that anxiety of, have I put my money like somewhere and it's going to go I'm going to go bankrupt, and like, I'm not going to have any money, it's quite daunting. So I think it's not necessarily about what but it's kind of how you behave. And it's Warren Buffett has his don't time the market, like time in the market, don't try and time the market. And that, I feel like Psychology of Money sort of, it ties in with that. So that's probably the kind of main one that helped with my career, and just kind of understanding how a fund manager works and how they mentality work. And the other book that I think I just love, not necessarily for career, but like in general, just sort of in life, is The Secret. And I think that book is just amazing. It teaches you the power of manifestation and kind of how you can bring things in your life to reality. So it's a bit different in terms of the kind of types of book that I guess you would generally read, but it is a really good read. And I think it really does change your mindset, especially if you're someone that's like, oh, I'm not sure if I can do this, or I'm not sure if I would be able to do this. And it, the pessimist, it lives inside everyone. I think as much as you try and be optimistic, there's always that little voice that's like, oh, are you going to do this? So I think that book really helps me career-wise, but also just life-wise.
Yeah, it sounds great. Can you remember who it's by, The Secret?
I think it's Rhonda, forgot her something.
Fact check.
Yeah.
We can fact check. The Secret is by Rhonda Byrne is what is coming up.
Yeah, okay. I knew it was Rhonda because I just have seen it on the cover. Yeah.
Rhonda Byrne, The Secret. No, that sounds really, really interesting. And I mean, timely if you're looking to manifest some goals for the new year as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it's a perfect January read, I think. So it's like if you put it on your Christmas wish list, maybe someone will buy it for you. But it is one of those books you can read over and over again. It's not like one that you just need to read once. It's like every January you could read it. So yeah, it's a good one.
Perfect. Some great recommendations there. So last question then. It's a big question. And that is, what are you most excited to see in the world of finance in the next 10 years?
Oh, that's a big question.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to stick with the theme and say I think financial education, because this inquiry started last month, middle of November, it kind of came about, and I think that is sort of a really positive thing that, now they're talking about it. And I know that it's been a topic that comes up here and there, but now it feels like they're actually trying to do something about it. I'm hoping in the next 10 years, we will see financial education in schools as part of the curriculum, and we will, see more kind of focus on teaching about the basics of mortgages and, interest and savings and investment and just everything that kind of comes under that umbrella. Just hope that there will be something on it. And I think the other thing is, hopefully with that education in schools, maybe there will be the option of having financial advice as a career path that is taught, as an option. Maybe there'll be an A-level qualification that's the equivalent to the CII exams or something like that, that maybe will introduce the element of financial advice as a profession at a younger age. And that would be really positive. So yeah, I maybe I'm manifesting it because of The Secret,
Yeah.
but I hope that happens in the next 10 years, because that would be really nice. And I think given the shortage of financial advisors, that seems like a perfect solution that would tie in together.
Definitely. I think it'd leave us in a much better position, wouldn't it, with the big exodus that we will be expecting imminently. So yeah, to educate those kids and give them an option to get into financial advice, I think is a very, very good thing to be excited about.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me, Sonia. It's been so great to hear all about Tina and her escapades, and I can't wait to see what she gets up to next. But congratulations on getting out the book and having such great feedback.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
A pleasure. So that was Sonia Rach on the NextGen Planners podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can listen to previous episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts, and on our website, which is www.nextgenplanners.co.uk. And there you can find more information about our fantastic community. And finally, if you can, do leave us a review. It really helps to grow the podcast so we can get it out to more people. Thank you very much.